Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Hello and welcome to our Great Big Monday show here on Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host, and so happy to have you with us. This hour, the chaplain is in. When the chaplain is in, we take questions of a pastoral nature. In particular, if you have questions about prayer, questions about family life, questions about the sacraments, or maybe your marital status, all those questions are welcome. 888-318-7884 is the number, and our chaplain is Father Hugh Barber, Norbertine priest, and Doctor of Philosophy, as I recently found out. Oh, he bows his head in humility when I say that. Hi, Father. How are you?
Acknowledgement.
You just acknowledge me. That's all I get.
Acknowledge the truth of what you said.
Okay. Fair enough. We have a whole bunch of wonderful guests looking at us through the window. It's very, very uncomfortable. I wish they weren't here, but they are the students of St. Joseph Academy. That's the apologetics class, Father. They have an apologetics class there.
Maybe they could teach me something, actually.
I imagine they
probably
probably
give me a
could.
critique afterwards as to
about the quality of your answers. That's right. And I should let the listener know that when Father's here, and the chaplain is in with Father, if you have a question that's not exactly a pastoral question, you just need some help working out something about the Catholic faith, that is welcome as well. Sure. 888-318-7884. Father, so much going on in the world right now. I want to ask you about the royal wedding.
Yes.
Do you have a complete lack of enthusiasm for that?
No, I'm waiting to hear what you want to ask.
Meghan Markle, the woman who married the prince.
Rachel is her name. Yes.
Her name is Rachel?
Yes. Right.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, wait a second. Who's been reading People magazine? How are you up on that? Did you just... I'm very impressed, Father, that you are aware of...
People magazine? Are you kidding?
No,
right.
Yes, I am kidding.
Right.
I heard somewhere, I think someone told me this, that before she married Prince Harry, I was going to call him the prince, but I should call him by his name. That's his name, right? Prince Harry.
It's Harry, right.
What is that, short for Harold, or was he named Harry? No, Harold.
Henry.
Henry. Oh, it's
Harry is a nickname for Henry.
Oh, so they named him after Henry VIII. I'm glad to hear that. No, could have been any of the Henrys, right?
Well, Henry VIII was called King Harry also. So.
Was he called King Harry?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
But here's my question. I was told that she was baptized before they got married.
Right. In order for her to marry him, she had to be baptized.
And why is that? Can you tell me why?
Well, because the royal family is, in order to marry into the royal family with someone who's in the succession to the throne, the person has to be a member of the Anglican Church.
Okay.
Or at least, actually, they changed the rules recently so that someone can actually be married to a Catholic, but the person in succession to the throne has to be an Anglican. But since she didn't have any religion at all, she was baptized and confirmed and received communion in the Anglican Church before the marriage, which is kind of nice to consider that they still care about that sort of thing and made sure it happened before the wedding.
It is, yeah. Yeah, so do they have anything, I don't know, maybe you know, I don't know, do the Anglicans have anything like RCIA or kind of a period of aspirancy or anything like that? Or
I would imagine she received some degree of instruction, maybe. Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, but I don't know, they don't have the rigid system that we have.
Oh, I'm not going there, but I think she went, Rachel, who's called Meghan. I read somewhere too that she went to a Catholic school. But
she did, in Los Angeles.
She knows the basics of the faith. Then maybe she knows the faith well. I don't know. Okay, so a monarch, the monarch of England, can't be a Catholic. We're still there.
No, that was the Test Act. That was because you have the Stuarts who came in after the Tudors, and they were philo-Catholic even when they weren't Catholic. And so, as they went on, they came closer and closer to the possibility that the sovereign might return to the Catholic faith, as two of the Stuart kings did on their deathbed. So to avoid that possibility, they had the so-called Glorious Revolution in 1611, which brought in William and Mary to guarantee a Protestant England. And so after that, they had the Test Act, which required that anyone who was going to be sovereign of England should be a Protestant. And so
Oh, I see.
that's the rule in England. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's why they went all the way to Germany to get their royal family.
So
if you're going to ask me these questions, they have complicated answers. So
no, it's fascinating to me. I mean, I know we have this long history, but and it's got all these twists and turns. But you still can't be a Catholic and be the sovereign.
The sovereign of England is the head of the church.
Yeah,
so
right. Because okay.
So
888-318-7884 is our number.
the Protestant church.
Not of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church.
Right. We know who the head of our church is. Right.
Yeah, it's Francis. He lives in Rome.
And Jesus.
Oh,
whose vicar he is.
You got to one up me. All right, so but it is also true that the visible head,
is
that
head
right?
on earth is
that the way
Pope
to say
Francis,
it?
Exactly.
Is Pope Francis? Yes.
So move over,
may
Elizabeth.
He live and prosper. Yes. Oh, but I want to say this about Elizabeth. I want to get your view on this because you know all these because you were raised Anglican and all that.
Right. Exactly.
I am so impressed with Queen Elizabeth's annual Christmas message. It seems so full of faith in Christ.
Always excellent. She's a personally devout woman, and her Christmas message, which I recommend to anybody every year, Christmas afternoon, just go online and hear it.
Yeah.
She always talks about Jesus. And in a way which no other, but she's
No.
not a politician. She's head of state and she's head of a church, and so she can talk about Jesus.
I think that's what maybe as an American you think about this kind of almost American stuffiness we have about the head of because the chief politician is our head of state. Oh, well, we don't mix religion and she's just so bold in talking about Christ on
she's
every Christmas.
pretty good. Yeah, it's really true. Yeah.
Yeah.
One year she had a Christmas message just on prayer and meditation. It was not bad at all.
There's probably a website somewhere that translates it into American, right? So we can understand it. Or
We speak the same language, actually.
we don't
Yes, we
speak
do.
the same. She speaks the Queen's English. As a matter of fact, she literally speaks the Queen's English every time she speaks.
And we understand her perfectly.
You do. I don't know what they're saying. I'm just teasing, Father. I know what they're saying. 888-318-7884 is the number. The chaplain is in with our chaplain, Father Hugh Barber, is our topic today. And we go first to Grant in Houston, Texas, listening on 1430 AM Guadalupe Radio. Grant, thanks so much for your call. Your question for Father.
Hello. My question is, why are priests celibate, or why do they take vows of celibacy?
Well, there's a long history to that. If you go back to the Old Testament, you'll find that the priests of the Old Testament had to abstain from relations with their wives before offering sacrifice in the temple. And that's a kind of remote precedent for the celibacy of the Catholic clergy. But then you find in the New Testament the idea that those who proclaim the gospel and celebrate the sacraments for the faithful should live lives which are signs of the future kingdom. That is, by their witness of living together in common and not possessing property and living only for the proclamation of the gospel. And so foregoing married life, not because married life is bad, but because in view of the coming of Christ and the promotion of the kingdom, they should dedicate themselves completely to the building up of the Christian community. And so that ideal was there from the beginning. We see it in both East and West. In the Eastern Church, bishops have to be celibates and also monastics. They have to be with a vow of poverty also. In the West, the whole clergy are supposed to be celibate, except for those that come in from various, as we mentioned earlier in the show, the Anglicans, who, if they come in and convert, their clergy can retain their wives and so on. That's a very old-fashioned expression. Doesn't sound very nice, but in any case, there you are. And but basically it's related to the ideal of the gospel that our Lord and his apostles, once they were, the apostles that is, once they were completely engaged in the apostolate, they did not devote themselves to the establishment of an earthly household, but rather to the building up of the church. And so the freedom that comes from that is the freedom that's included in celibacy and in the common life of the clergy.
Does that help you, Grant?
Yes, and has that always been the case since the time of Christ? I've heard some rumors that the standard changed because families were too expensive, and I thought that was a bit outlandish. But
yeah, it's quite outlandish because the fact is that you can show, and there's a very good book called The Apostolic Origins of Priestly Celibacy. You can look that up. It has the whole story in it. The practice of celibacy by the clergy goes back to the beginning. Now, what one finds is in subsequent history, the practice of celibacy fell off, and so they had to reestablish it. And sometimes you'll hear people saying, well, celibacy didn't occur until the 9th century or the 13th century or the 12th century, but that is only because at certain points the priest had fallen away from the practice of celibacy and it had to be reestablished. But it's very, very clear. St. Paul is very clear in his epistles. Our Savior himself was celibate. I don't know what more evidence you would need in terms of early church history for this practice, but you don't need to believe people that say that it was a later development. It was there from the very, very beginning.
Okay, Grant.
Yes, that's great. Thank you very much.
Sure. God bless.
Thank you for that call, Grant. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more. The Chaplain is in with our chaplain, Father Hugh Barber, right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
Tim Staples here. Since May is the month of Mary and Mother's Day, I'm offering a great opportunity for you to help yourself, your family, and your friends to get to know our Blessed Mother more deeply than ever before. And to help make that happen, we're offering my book, Behold Your Mother, a biblical and historical defense of the Marian doctrines for only $9.95. Folks, that's over 45% off the regular price. From her Immaculate Conception to the Annunciation, from her title as Mother of God to her perpetual virginity, from her assumption into heaven to her role as co-redemptrix, I'll give you all the facts and back them up with solid biblical evidence in a way that's easy to read, remember, and understand. Make this May the month you, your friends, and your family grow closer to the Mother of the Church, our Mother Mary. To get your copies of Behold Your Mother, call 1-888-291-8000 or log on to the shop at Catholic.com.
God helps those who help themselves. Preach the gospel always. When necessary, use words. We all hear sayings like these, and we assume they come from the Bible, the saints, or famous Christian writers. Nobody can seem to place their origin, but by sheer repetition, they've acquired a halo of truth. In my new book, What the Saints Never Said, I look at over 40 of these well-known sayings and track them back to their original sources. You'll be surprised at what I found. Some are close to what was really said. Many were misattributed or twisted beyond their original meaning, and more than a few of these sayings were simply made up. I hope by setting the record straight, I can make you aware of the theological errors that can lead us away from the faith and offer you authentic quotes from Scripture, saints, and scholars that will draw you closer to our faith. Get your copy of What the Saints Never Said by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Tim Staples, Trent Horn, Cy Kellett, Chris Check, Carlo Broussard. Our on-fire lineup of speakers will inform and inspire your audience to grow in their Catholic faith. For more information on booking a Catholic Answers speaker for your event, visit CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com today.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Don't make them laugh, Father. We can hear them in the microphones. We continue to have our wonderful guests here from St. Joseph Academy up the road from us in San Marcos, California, right? And this is their apologetics class, Father, and they're going to be teaching you later about how to do apologetics.
Tell me where I screwed up. Yeah.
And later, if one of you wants to get on the microphone, you can come and ask Father a question. The chaplain is in this hour. Father Hugh Barber is our chaplain, and we take mostly questions of a pastoral nature when the chaplain is here. We go now to Michelle in Buffalo, New York, listening on the Stations of the Cross 101.7. Michelle, your question for Father.
Take you off of Bluetooth here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Very good.
just
Thank you
fine.
for
Perfect.
doing that. I love when people do that.
Oh, well, I try. My question actually has to do with the 9 choirs of angels.
Mm-hmm.
I was praying the St. Michael Chaplet
Right.
and totally loving it. And then I wanted to find out more about each of the choirs of angels. So I went on to a website I go to, a pretty reputable Catholic website, and was reading about each of the angels. And I got confused on what it talked about with the principalities, because it seemed like they talked about them being more like they were against God, but they are for Jesus himself. And so I was kind of thought that was odd. So I started doing a little bit more research, and then came across, I think it was the letter of Corinthians that Paul talked about. Don't pay attention so much to the angels, and and all this other stuff. So I stopped praying the chaplet. I kind of missed it. So I was wondering if you can enlighten me a little bit about the principalities or the 9 choirs, or what we as Catholics can kind of do with the angels.
Well, if you're talking about what you read in St. Paul, the point there is that the principalities and powers, that can refer both to fallen and unfallen angels. And so it's true, because angels fell from every one of the 9 ranks of angels. So there are fallen principalities and there are unfallen principalities. So in the Chaplet of St. Michael, which you should continue to pray and take up again, it's not a problem, you can certainly invoke the principalities, the powers, thrones, dominations, all of them, all of the 9 choirs, because you're invoking the unfallen angels. But it is true that there are fallen angels from each of those groups too. And so sometimes in the scriptures it may be a little ambiguous as to which we are referring to. And add to that the consideration that God did not intend to reveal to us the role even of the good angels in detail, because our human curiosity is such that we might really get interested in that and not understand that our principal spiritual life is based upon a continuity and a union with Jesus himself, the King of all the angels, and that will reserve to heaven our understanding of the role, the very, very, very important role that the angels play in our salvation and the governance of the world. But God did not see fit to reveal all those details to us. And so human beings have a certain fascination with the angels, and so sometimes they tend to go a little overboard. But if you just keep your devotions within the limits established by the Church, like the feast days of the angels, the guardian angel, St. Michael Chaplet's fine, prayer to St. Michael, all those things, then you'll be just fine. But you do want to avoid speculations because they don't always lead to any certainty. So in any case, so it's perfectly fine to pray to the principalities. Just when a Christian prays the angels, we're praying to the ones that didn't fall, not the ones that fell.
Is that cleared up, Michelle?
That is extremely clear, and thank you. I'm excited to go pray that chaplet again.
Sure, just go right ahead. It's a beautiful prayer.
And thanks for turning off the Bluetooth so that we could hear you. Nice talking with you, Michelle. Call anytime. We go now to, in Katy, Texas. Is that your home, Nick? That is our sound engineer's home. Listening from Katy, Texas is Stephanie, who listens on EWTN. Stephanie, you are on with Father Hugh Barber. Your question, please.
Yes, my daughter was married in the church, and she's going through a divorce.
I'm sorry.
So for her to get an annulment, does her husband have to cooperate in that process?
Well, no, he does not. He has the right to, and he should, so that the judgment can be made with as much information as possible. But if he refuses to, she can still proceed in the church law, because you can't hinder her based upon lack of cooperation from the other party. So the people in the diocese where she is, they'll know how to deal with it if he doesn't want to comply. But she should make sure that he's contacted and able to give his testimony freely, because sometimes the couple, they don't want each other to testify, as is understandable. But yes, her husband does need to comply, but if he doesn't, they can still proceed. Okay?
Yeah, he's already stated that he won't. That's why I'm asking.
Well,
okay.
and that makes it easier in a certain sense, although it's much easier if both parties are in accordance. It moves more quickly. But if both parties aren't, it's a little slower, but still they can proceed. Okay.
How long does it take?
It just depends upon the conditions of the case, because every marriage is different, and so there's no way to predict exactly how long it takes. You could probably ask better the people in your own diocese what their prognosis is about how long it'll take.
Stephanie, thank you. I hope that was all helpful. Father, something I don't understand, but there has been a change in the forms used for an annulment to make it more to help the process.
Right.
Is that true?
They streamlined it so that if both couples are in agreement, both parties are in agreement, then it moves more quickly.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. Got it. Stephanie, thank you so much for that call.
That's in order to encourage people not to omit to get a church annulment. So they made it easier for them.
Right, because if you're in a marriage that is not a sacramentally valid marriage, and you don't bother with the annulment because you think it's just too difficult to get the annulment, then you end up in a situation where you don't have access to the sacraments on a regular basis.
Right.
But you should.
That's why Pope Francis simplified the process, especially in view of Latin America and other places where people don't regularly seek annulments. In the States, it's very common. But in Latin countries, people generally don't seek annulments, and so they're trying to encourage them to, enable themselves to have a church wedding.
I think that's why we should have bishops from around the world. I mean, popes from around the world. Like, oh, he knows the Latin American experience. Next time, it should be somebody from Africa. He knows the African. You don't think?
I don't say no. I mean, it's whoever they elect.
You're going to leave it in the Holy Spirit's hands. You don't want to go with my method. You want to just go with the Holy Spirit. Okay,
yeah,
fine.
I think it's fine. Yeah,
fine. If you're a stickler for those things,
I like Italians myself anyway. But the Pope is an Italian.
I like Italians too. I'm not saying
he's an Italian from Argentina.
We haven't had an Italian Pope since Paul VI, though. Like all these kids here, they weren't even born the last time we had.
No,
Pope John
Paul I. Yeah,
first. Oh,
and this Pope, remember, he's Italian.
He's Argentine Italian.
But everybody in Argentina is Italian. About half the people are Italians.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yep. You get me on the
Don't forget.
Well, I do forget, Father. I forget almost everything. Francesca in Rochester, New York, listening on 1460 AM. You are on with Father Hugh Barber, our chaplain. Your question, please.
Hi. I'm backing up to your conversation earlier about Meghan Markle, and I
now the Duchess of Sussex.
That's right.
Rachel, the Duchess of Sussex.
Right. But I listened, to all the coverage, and somewhere in the whole talking about it during this waiting for her to come, they said, one of the broadcasters said that she had been baptized just recently by, I don't know, the bishop or who's at the head of the
Archbishop of Canterbury.
Yeah. And so I was curious if she had been Catholic. I mean, we don't know that she had been baptized, so that could have been the situation. But if she had been baptized Catholic, I mean, the Catholic Church accepts Protestant baptism, so would they not accept a Catholic baptism?
No, she definitely was never a Catholic, no matter what the media says. She was never, ever, 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 ever a Catholic. She went to Catholic school, okay? So they're saying things they don't know about. She was never baptized, and so she was baptized for the first time in the Anglican Church. And the Catholic Church recognizes Anglican baptism if it's conferred according to what they have in their liturgy, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. But if you get some kind of Anglican priest who baptizes in the name of the Creator, the Redeemer, and the Sanctifier to avoid gender language, then that's not valid. So she was baptized, I'm sure, validly by the Archbishop of Canterbury, and that's a great thing for her. The best thing she got out of that marriage was she was baptized.
Best thing any of us got out of life.
Best thing she got out of that marriage, she was baptized. That's what Jesus thinks. That's what Mary thinks.
Right.
And so whatever the ceremony was and whatnot, the little private baptism was far better than anything else that ever happened. And it took away her sins if she did it deliberately and willingly.
Yeah, right.
And so that's a great benefit. The Catholic Church accepts Protestant baptism if it's conferred according to the conditions established in the Church's teaching and in the Gospel. But in any case, she was never a Catholic, so she just went to Catholic school. Now that they didn't manage to baptize her is a shame on them. I don't know why they didn't manage to convert her, but they didn't. But that's okay.
Well, they can't get everybody.
No, but I mean, whatever.
But so it would see. Thank you, Francesca, very much for that call. I hope that was helpful to you.
If she'd gone to St. Joseph's Academy, she wouldn't have been baptized by the time she was graduating.
Oh yeah, the people at St. Joseph's would.
They would not have left her.
You're not just pandering to these 40 students that we have.
It would have been a social thing. It wasn't just a private school.
Well, it seems to me that when you say the best thing she ever got out of that marriage, or will ever get out of that marriage, is her baptism, am I to read that as you saying it's not that great to marry Prince Harry, or your relationship with Jesus is more important even than your marriage?
I would say the latter. Okay, I'm sure Prince Harry's
No, but I
surprised
think-
too.
yeah.
and he was baptized. So just
Yeah.
let's just hope they're happy together.
I just didn't want a listener to think, oh, Father doesn't approve of the prince or something. But
No,
it's not saying that. It's like,
No, I'm
like
saying it's
your
just that-
relationship with Christ is
Right.
the most important thing.
Yeah, that's the most important thing.
And
exactly.
then why is baptism important?
Thanks
to
for the
our-
clarification. It's
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
It's
So,
important.
but baptism in a particular way configures us to Christ.
Precisely right.
There's
So
no
that-
other way to get that.
Right. That's
it.
why it's so important.
Yeah.
So it's not just a minor detail.
No, that's right. That's right. And well, God bless her. She's got the Queen to help her
I mean,
to.
Oprah Winfrey didn't care about it, but everybody else did.
Oprah Winfrey said something negative about baptism?
No, of course not.
Oh, all right. You're gonna have to explain that to me at the
I'm
break.
just saying she didn't care about it.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
predicting. I'm reading her mind.
Oh, hey. Well, the chaplain is in. That doesn't mean I have to understand everything he says. Sometimes he's on a level far above me. We'll be right back with more of your questions for Father Hugh Barber right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
EWTN, teaching the truth.
Well, I don't think we're like the typical college students because we really hang out at our campus ministry and everything. It's amazing about how much more connected you feel. We share really cool articles from actually you guys, EWTN, and like what you were saying about evangelization. So that's really nice.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
God helps those who help themselves. Preach the gospel always. When necessary, use words. We all hear sayings like these, and we assume they come from the Bible, the saints, or famous Christian writers. Nobody can seem to place their origin, but by sheer repetition, they've acquired a halo of truth. In my new book, What the Saints Never Said, I look at over 40 of these well-known sayings and track them back to their original sources. You'll be surprised at what I found. Some are close to what was really said. Many were misattributed or twisted beyond their original meaning, and more than a few of these sayings were simply made up. I hope by setting the record straight, I can make you aware of the theological errors that can lead us away from the faith and offer you authentic quotes from Scripture, saints, and scholars that will draw you closer to our faith. Get your copy of What the Saints Never Said by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Over the years, we have heard thousands of stories of how the ministry of Catholic Answers and Catholic Answers Live has changed lives all over the world. Do you have such a story? We'd love to hear how Catholic Answers has changed your life. Send your story to us today. Email us at mystory@catholic.com, or you can call 619-387-7200 to make an audio recording of your story.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Great Big Giant Monday show. Second hour, we're going to be talking a little bit about what we can call the transgender moment and how do we respond to the transgender moment. Ryan T. Anderson wrote a fine new book about that called When Harry Became Sally, and we look forward to your calls on that. And it's just part of our efforts to bring you the greatest Monday shows possible. This hour, we have Father Hugh Barber, our chaplain, here with us. And this hour we call The Chaplain is In. If you have a chaplain-type question, a question that you would ask a pastor or a chaplain, this is your hour. 888-318-7884 is our number. 888-31-TRUTH. We are joined in studio. Father Hugh and I are joined now by Xavier, who is junior at St. Joseph's Academy, just north of us. You're part of the apologetics class, right?
Yes, I am.
Yep. And last year, what did you take? Last semester.
Morality.
So you do morality first semester and then apologetics.
Yes, sir.
And everybody that took the class is completely moral now. There's no moral flaws in any of you.
Yes, I guess so.
I don't know if that's how it works, but okay. Father encouraged him to say yes. So Xavier, you have a question for Father.
Yes, my question is, was Judas born to betray Christ?
Father has no answer for you, Xavier.
It's a very serious question, because our Lord himself said that woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would be better for him if he'd never been born.
Right.
And he also says that he betrayed him that the scripture might be fulfilled. And so those are very weighty statements coming from the mouth of the Son of God. And they can be troubling to us because, of course, our tendency is to relate the statements about Judas to our own individual sins or moral struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, am I predestined to eternal loss because I keep falling into this sin and can't seem to overcome it?
Yeah.
That's really at the bottom of the question. Not for you, but for other people here, maybe in any case. But I think that's there. That's there behind it all, because Judas is sort of the archetypal strong case for human sin. What could be worse than that?
Yeah,
betraying
right.
the Son of God. But if you say he was born to betray our Lord, God is supreme goodness, and his creative power only bestows good things, nothing else. And so it wouldn't be right to say that he deliberately makes someone in order for them to fall short or be lost. Now that's different from God foreseeing in our way of speaking, because for God everything is at one time, it's all instantaneous. So the foreseeing part, the before part, is something that's in our imagination, but for God it's all at once. That's different from God seeing that person will fall short or will sin. And I think that our Lord's teaching regarding Judas is more about our reflection on sin than it is about any certainty we have as to the destiny of Judas. Granted, the tradition is that he was eternally lost, and you see that in some of the fathers and doctors of the church. But on the other hand, when our Lord said it'd be better for him that he'd never been born, our Lord could have meant that very literally. That is, better that he'd been died before he came forth in the womb so that he would never sin or offend God. And on that score, we could all say that there's a certain thing where we could say, rather than ever having offended our Lord grievously, it would be better for me if I'd never been born. Now, I'm not saying that to be depressed or dramatic or hard on ourselves, but the fact is that we can't evaluate very well in our own mind what sin actually is and how bad it actually is. And so I think that we ought to view Judas's case as kind of a warning to us that we're always free to offend or to deny our Lord, but it's not a proof that God creates some people for evil and other people for good. That is, whatever Judas has right now, whether he's in hell or in purgatory or in heaven, he has it as an effect of the goodness of God. Because God, once he gives his gifts, he doesn't take them back. But we can refuse his gifts or set them aside or not use them or abuse them, but his gifts remain his gifts. So everything that Judas had, he used the way Judas intended to use it. But our Lord knew that in order for him to redeem the people of God in his cross and passion, that he had to be betrayed. And poor Judas was the man who was going to do it, and he knew all of that. But we're allowed to hold out hope even for him, because our Lord's words do not definitively indicate his damnation, even though we would be stupid to say that they don't indicate that. That would also seem obvious that they might indicate that, and it's a possibility. But we have to always consider that God is always bestowing good things and never evil things upon his creation. And so to the extent to which any of them fall into evil, it's because of some defect on their own part, which is not something God made, because God doesn't make defects. He doesn't make things that aren't good or that are imperfect. He makes everything good. And if you see that in Genesis, the days of creation, the 6 days of creation, every single point is declared good. And finally, when he creates man, he declares human nature very good. And so Judas had that nature. And so from God's point of view, he wasn't born to betray the Savior, but he did. And so that's a warning to us all. Peter also betrayed Jesus, but repented and loved him. So how's that?
That's good. Thank you.
Good enough? Any other
Yeah.
questions? Objections? Heresies?
He's looking to the class.
You're an
to see-
apologetics
Did
class.
anybody notice Father commit any
Say-
heresies there? No? Okay, good.
I don't believe so.
Okay, good. Okay.
Thanks,
Neither do
Xavier.
I, but you never know.
All right, come on. Big hand for Xavier. Nicely done. Nicely done, Xavier. Thanks for coming.
Good question.
All right, you can stay there if you want till the break, Xavier. Whatever you like to do. We're gonna, however, we're gonna move on.
Staying out.
Let's go to John in Dallas, Texas, listening to 910 AM Guadalupe Radio. John, so happy to have you with us. You are with our chaplain, Father Hugh. Your question, please.
Thank you for taking my call. I had a question, Father. I pray a lot of formalistic prayers of the Rosary, Liturgy of the Hours, and then I have a handful of other ones that I pray. And lately, especially, I've become distracted in the middle of that, and I don't know whether I'm, and then I go back and I start over, and then I get distracted again, and I go back and start over. I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to continue to keep going back or if I should just move on. I mean, it sounds like a stupid question, but that's
no,
that's
it's
sort
not
of
a stupid
my
question. It's a great question. In St. Thomas's Summa of Theology, there's a question whether it is necessary to pray with attention. Okay. And surprisingly, he begins it because he always begins those questions with the opposite of what he's going to conclude. So he says, yes, it would seem it's necessary to pray with attention, which means he's going to argue that no, it's not. Now that sounds really shocking, but there's a difference between attention and intention. And what St. Thomas teaches us is that if you begin to pray and you do not retract your intention to pray, no matter how distracted you got in the meantime, as long as you didn't retract that intention, you're still praying. And I'll give you an example. If you're talking to a friend or your wife or who's your best friend or somebody, and while you're talking to that person, you're also thinking of something else, are you not talking to them? Of course you are. You're talking to that person. But your mind may wander while you're having a conversation, but you're still having a conversation. It's like, God doesn't, imagine if someone said to you, oh, good morning, how are you? And you could have said, well, do you really care? Is that what you're thinking of? Are those just words? And that person is rude because you're being polite and greeting that person, even though you may not really be thinking about how the person is. And they answer fine or not. So too, when you're saying a Hail Mary, you're greeting Our Lady, but your mind might wander, but your intention is to greet her, just like your intention is saying good morning, how are you, is to communicate with the people around you. And our Lord and Our Lady are infinitely polite, and if you address them, even distractedly, they listen and they respond. It's just the way it is. Now, St. Thomas goes on to say that if you want to pray with consolation, with sweetness, with the experience of prayer, then you have to pay attention. But as long as you intend to pray, it doesn't matter if you got distracted. So you pray the Rosary, you don't have to go back over and start over again. The office, the same way with the Mass. Otherwise, Christian prayer would be a nightmare of scrupulosity because there's no one who can get through an entire Our Father without being distracted unless they get some mystical grace. So,
John, was that
a great question.
Was that answer helpful to you, or did you get distracted and not pay attention while Father was talking?
No, I didn't get distracted. I was completely focused.
Yeah, good.
No, that was
there you go.
That was a great answer. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, look it up in the Summa of St. Thomas. Go on New Advent and find the section on prayer, and you can read the whole answer there, but it's pretty consoling.
What section is it in again?
Let's see, the section on prayer, it would be in the second part of the second part.
That's
of the
how.
Summa. All right.
That's my favorite thing about St. Thomas. It's in the second part of the second part.
The acts which pertain to the virtue of religion, prayer is one of them, and there's a whole discussion on it.
Okay, John?
Okay, great. Great. Thank you very much.
Sure, God bless you.
Thank you,
Peace.
John. I'm going to start paying attention when you talk, Father. I feel pretty sure that was a good answer. I'll just never know for certain because I got distracted. I'm sorry.
Well, as St. Thomas says, you want the sweetness and enjoyment that comes, you have to pay attention.
I didn't get the sweetness and enjoyment of your company that I should have gotten. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more. The chaplain is in. Father Hugh Barber is our chaplain, and your questions are welcome. Just dial 888-318-7884.
Xavier, feel free to chime in if he wants to.
Xavier, thanks again for your question.
Thank you for answering.
This is Bishop Robert Barron. You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Join us this September for a conference that is sure to ignite and inform your faith.
Every time we come here, it's just an incredible experience.
I love it. I love it. I'm so glad I came here.
And I'm having the time of my life.
Early bird pricing ends July 2nd. Visit CatholicAnswersConference.com or call 1-888-291-8000 today to register.
These guys are so amazing. I always get so much, learn so much. I've already signed up for next year. Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
What difference does it make who or what you worship or what you believe? Sharing the faith used to make some people mad because it challenged their own strong beliefs. Today, it makes a lot of people yawn because they don't have strong beliefs about anything. Religious indifference is the great spiritual sickness of our age, a product of the relativism that dominates modern culture. This is Matt Nelson, and in my new book, Just Whatever, I'll take down the building blocks of religious indifference one by one. We'll look at the different kinds of indifference you tend to encounter in your friends and family members to see where they come from and why they're seductive. What you believe matters. Find out why and what to do about it in my new book, Just Whatever. You can order your copy of Just Whatever by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Pope Francis said, "The key that opens the door to faith is prayer." Join St. Paul Street Evangelization by running a prayer station in the public square. You don't need to be a professional apologist or theologian. Just listen to the needs of the people you encounter. Offer encouragement, take prayer requests, and pray with people. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host, joined in studio by Father Hugh Barber and about, half a hundred students from St. Joseph Academy. This is no, you don't think half a hundred? I'm not good at math, all right? I have other skills. They're looking at me like, I guess it's not half a hundred, maybe a third of 100. Father Hugh Barber in the studio with me, and we are now joined by Erica Olson.
Hello.
Hi, Erica.
You got it right this time.
I know.
Last time you stumbled.
I stumbled a little bit because I was trying to remember the Olson girl that was on Little House on the Prairie. Nellie. Oh yeah, that's your sister, Nellie, right? Yeah. Nellie Olson.
Yeah, I look just like her.
Do we have?
I was thinking of the coffee lady myself, but anyway.
I look just like her too.
That's really dated.
That really is dated. Yeah. How old are you? Okay, so look, Erica, when you come in here, I know we're going to talk about the conference coming up. Do we have seats available still for the conference of September?
We have a limited number of seats.
A limited number of seats are still available. Okay, yeah. So it's
September. No, they really are. They're really going fast.
Yeah,
I came back on every Monday is my favorite day to come back because I have every time somebody registers, it sends me a little email notification that someone has registered.
Yeah.
And so on Monday, my email box is full of little notifications. Yeah. And so if you really want to get in, you have to do it fast.
Yeah,
they are selling
because
fast.
It's going to be a huge deal. I mean, with our wonderful guest, Dr. Stacy Trasankos, and Father Ehrman, Father Terrence Ehrman, and with our keynote speaker, Cardinal Burke, and with our homilist, Father Hugh Barber.
Yes.
And then all of our guys, it's going to be really something extraordinary.
It's going to be great.
And
Father Hugh, I'm so excited for this man. I haven't pitched this cruise with you, Cy. I come in here a lot to pitch this cruise and tell people about it. Conference.
I was going to say, did we switch things?
I'm the event planner.
The cruise is sold
juggling
out.
all these events.
Yeah, but the cruise is sold out, and that's what's going to happen to the conference soon, too.
The conference, I come in here and I try to pick a speaker that we're going to have at the conference to talk with while I'm on the show with you. And I haven't been able to visit with Father Hugh on the show with you. And so I was really excited to finally be able to be on the show on a day that Father Hugh is here because I love this man, and everybody should love this man. They really should. He's like a god. He was sent from God to be here with us.
I thought you were going to say he's like a god there for a second, but you meant God send.
He's like a God send.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
No, he is.
He is. I know. We love our Father Hugh.
He's turning red.
We love our Father Hugh.
It's okay. No, Father Hugh, you're on television now.
So, Father,
it's not only the radio anymore.
Well, you're easier to look at than Xavier, that's for sure.
Poor Xavier. You'll be okay, Xavier. Don't worry. Faith and science, friends or foes. I think this is also part of why this conference is going to be so huge. This topic is a super important topic for our moment in history. We have this growing what we can call, I think, fairly call scientism, right? Where people believe that the only way to know things for certain is science, which, by the way, is a non-scientific proposition. You could never prove that by science, therefore...
Unless by science you mean certain knowledge, in which case even faith
Yeah, and
is
then it goes
science.
around and around and around. But this is really afflicting young people, well, everybody, but certainly people are coming out of college not knowing that you can, in fact, know things in ways other than experimental science. So I think the topic is just fantastic. Plus, Jimmy Akin square dancing. We're going to do the radio show live from the floor of the conference.
That is always so fun.
You're going to be the hype woman.
I'll be the hype woman, and the audience at the conference is going to ask all the questions on the show.
Right.
That's always
That's a lot of fun.
You're going to hold up little cards telling us how many more minutes we have? Do you do that?
No, I hold up cards that say, like, awkward silence for when Cy tells a
You don't need to hold up a sign, Erica. The awkward silence follows just naturally. It just flows naturally from when I talk.
I'll hold the applause line for you, too, a couple of times.
Let me just tell people a few things about it. Early bird pricing is happening now through July 2nd.
Yes.
We're not joking about the seats being limited. In addition to the square dancing, there'll also be Jimmy Akin M&M's, special room rate of $149 a night at the Hyatt Regency La Jolla.
That's a steal.
It is a steal. And $8 parking this year with in-and-out privileges. So
Yes.
you don't have to pay well, let's just say there was another venue we were at where I thought
had to pay,
it was
like-
usury. I thought it was usury, the amount that
It was
I
like
did.
the price of the room to
to
get
just
in
to
and out of
park,
the
and they
parking
wouldn't
lot.
let you go in and out either. You're in.
You're
now.
in,
You're just
and you
in
couldn't
now.
get out.
So it's going to be fantastic. You go to CatholicAnswersConference.com. We really want you to be there. This is going to be a big deal. CatholicAnswersConference.com. Thank you, Erica Olson.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your expressions of love for Father too.
That's very kind. Yes, appreciate it.
He deserves them.
Yep. We've got to go to a call now. Holly in Columbia, South Carolina. You're so lucky to live in Columbia, South Carolina. Holly, your question for Father.
Oh, thank you very much. I was having a discussion with a friend of mine just this afternoon about what the church teaches about the souls of our pets. And, I pray a lot for people who say that their pet is going to have surgery or their pet is very sick. And I think that St. Francis is a wonderful intercessor for our animal friends. But my question is, what happens to our pets, our animal friends at death?
Well, there are different kinds of souls in the universe that God created. And the first and most simple, or let's say not simple, but the most elemental form of soul is that which plants have. That is, the soul is the principle of life in anything which has the ability of self-movement. And so they're plants first. They assimilate other products to themselves and then through nutrition and continue their life. Right? Then you have animals who have various degrees of life, from just simply the ability to reproduce to and a little bit of reaction to external stimuli like an oyster or something, all the way up to very elaborate animals that have sense powers and all five senses, and they give evidence of memory, imagination, and emotion. And of course, those are the animals we're normally talking about when people ask about the fate of their pets, because they're the ones that are most like us, so that it's easy for us to transfer onto them the human feelings and emotions and experience that we have, because they're so similar on the level of their sense life. But then there's the human soul, which beyond animals that have the powers of sense, is able to grasp the nature of the universe, the natures of things in themselves, the being of things in themselves, and also to have the power to choose the supreme good, not determined to particular goods of their nature, but rather to the good himself, the good of all things. Example, your dog is definitely going to pick a steak if it's put in front of him and he's hungry. He can't say, oh, it's a Friday, even though I want the steak, I'm not going to eat it, all right? He's not going to be able to do that because he doesn't have the spiritual capacity to recognize what a steak is and what human nature is and why he would be abstaining from the steak. So animals don't have a nature which exceeds the powers of their material bodily experience. And so for that reason, generally speaking, in Catholic philosophy, we conclude that animals do not, their souls do not survive bodily death because their souls are completely limited to the material order. Whereas human souls, which have a spiritual capacity, survive bodily death because they have activities that are not linked only to matter, but also give clear evidence of spirituality. So the classical teaching is that no, the souls of animals do not continue after this life. I know that upsets people who have pets, but I think who have this particular impression, but there are many people that don't have it. But I would say the best way to view it is that your cat or your dog's eternity or heaven is found in you. And what some people say when a human being dies, oh, he lives on a memory, that's true of our pets, and that's perfectly reasonable. But it's not part of traditional Catholic teaching that pets have an eternal life, except in us, in our memory and our gratitude to God for their company and their goodness. But Christ did not come to redeem our pets, and his resurrection is not the form of the resurrection of animals, but of men. So I think there's a serious issue here. But there are some writers, admittedly, even like Peter Kreeft, the apologist, who argue that the general resurrection will include also the animals.
I believe his teaching is if you need your cat to be happy in heaven, you'll have your cat in heaven.
That's what I tell people. I'm not going to tell a little lady whose cat just died. I said, look, if you need your cat to be happy in heaven, God will certainly provide it. I do say that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that she will really want her cat once she gets to heaven.
Well, that's between her, God, and the cat, though.
Right.
Holly, I'm going to go.
Hopefully it's our God.
I'm going to go on real quick just because we had a caller waiting a long time, and I want to get to him before we go. Thank you for the call, Holly. Kyle in Tulsa, Oklahoma, watching on Facebook Live. You are on with Father Hugh. I'm sorry I have so little time left, but your question quickly, please.
That's all right. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Sure.
There's a little bit of a backstory for it, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. Long story short, I have a very good friend of mine who was raised Anglican, so in the Episcopal Church, and he became Catholic about a year and a half ago or so. And, after a long sort of research and that sort of thing, so he was very sure in his decision, but he sort of underestimated the kind of culture shock that exists between both churches. And he tried very, very, very hard to feel at home and feel welcomed, but unfortunately, at two of the parishes that he attended, they didn't really embrace him, reach out to him. And so kind of in a last stand, I said, let's just go talk to Father, and we'll sort it out. And then his question was to him, if I go back to the Anglican faith, I've read the Catechism, I've read Lumen Gentium, is it correct to infer that I'm going to go to hell? And I, of course, thought the priest would say something much more different, but to my shock, he said, well, put it bluntly, yes. And so my question is that actually what the Catholic Church teaches? And am I wrong in supporting his decision to go back because he's in a sort of spiritual hell right now?
All right.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I would say this, that membership or union with Christ's Church, the one he founded, is an estimable grace that we should not give up easily. And I can understand his frustration. I can easily believe it. I believe everything you're telling me. But the Church has set up a special jurisdiction for former Anglicans, the Anglican Ordinariate, which exists in many places, and he might contact that Ordinariate. Their offices are in Houston. They have a bishop, and they have parishes throughout the country for former Anglicans, and they maintain their liturgy and their customs. And so even if he's not able to go to one of their parishes, he might want to establish some contact. It's called the Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter, and contact them and begin to talk to them about his situation. Because certainly returning to the Anglican Church after having been a Catholic would be leaving the church, basically. And so that is a morally dangerous position to be in. Of course, given the stress he's under, I wouldn't venture to judge whether or not he's guilty of grave sin or not. But objectively, materially, yes, because the Anglican Church as such is not a church founded by Jesus Christ. It's rather a human institution founded because of historical circumstances. But they have sacraments, baptism, and therefore their members are in some sense related to the Catholic Church. So I would just say, get in touch with the Anglican Ordinariate, that Ordinariate of
the Chair of St.
Peter. They have a website and everything, and get him to get some spiritual direction and communication with their clergy there, and I'm sure he'll get some consolation and the ability to persevere. Okay, I'll pray for him too.
Thank you, Kyle, very, very much. You can reach out to us here at Catholic Answers as well, and we can put you in contact with some people if you'd prefer to do that, or if you'd like to do that. Father Hugh, may we have your very quick blessing? I'm sorry to make you quick.
Benedictio Dei omnipotentis Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendat super vos et
Amen.
manet semper.
Oh, amen. Excuse me, Father. I amen too soon. We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Hello, my friends. This is Christopher Check, president of Catholic Answers. I'm sure you have heard that it's still okay these days to hold to the quaint superstitions of Catholicism as long as you leave them in church, because when it comes to reality, religion is just foolishness that withers in the fierce light of science. Problem is, this narrative is false. It is in the Christian West that scientific discovery has most flourished. Still, too many of us find ourselves flat-footed when confronted with bugbears like Adam and Eve versus evolution, creation versus Big Bang, and Galileo versus the Inquisition. What can you do? Come to Catholic Answers 5th National Conference, Faith and Science. Guest speakers Father Terry Ehrman and Dr. Stacy Trasankos will join the whole Catholic Answers team to explain how faith and science are actually in harmony. September 27 to 30, right here in San Diego. And we are thrilled to announce a special keynote address by Raymond Leo Cardinal Burke honoring the 50th anniversary of Humanae Vitae. For all the details, visit CatholicAnswersConference.com.
Hi, this is Tim Staples. Are you looking for an on-fire Catholic speaker to come and speak at your conference or parish event? We've got a whole host of Catholic Answer speakers just waiting to get on a plane and come see you. Go to CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com to get all the information you need to make your event the talk of the town. That's CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com. We look forward to seeing you.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and you've probably heard me explain Catholicism to non-Catholic callers on the radio or engage opponents in formal public debates. I've always hoped these interactions would show people how to graciously defend and share our faith. But they're not enough. That's why I've created a weekly podcast that will help Catholics answer the toughest objections against our faith. Every episode of the Council of Trent will provide listeners with a conversation roadmap that will help them share their faith with anyone. Keep in mind that I hate boring lectures. These podcasts will contain entertaining, informative, and practical explanations of the faith, as well as interviews with the best Catholic writers and speakers in the world today. Visit TrentHornPodcast.com today to find out how you can subscribe to my new podcast. That's TrentHornPodcast.com.
Did you know that Catholic Answers Live is on TV? What began as a monthly series on EWTN in April of 2017 is now going to be coming to you on a weekly basis. You can catch Catholic Answers Live TV Saturdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on EWTN, with an encore at 2:30 a.m. on Sundays. We'll also be available soon on Apple TV, Roku, and the Augustine Institute's multimedia platform, Form. Make a point of making Catholic Answers Live TV part of your weekly viewing, and we'll see you on the airwaves.
If only evangelization was easy. But the truth of the matter is that most of the time, it's not. Talking about the Catholic faith is enough of a challenge even before dealing with the roadblocks that keep people from listening with an open mind. Apologist Carlo Broussard recognized that as he wrote Prepare the Way, a guide to step-by-step strategies that readers can use to break down those barriers to the very existence of God and religious truth, barriers to basic Christian beliefs, and barriers to the distinctive teachings and claims of the Catholic Church. Don't let obstacles get in your way. Learn how to overcome them. Order your copy of Prepare the Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
The world is changing. The days of picking up a book or popping a DVD or compact disc in the player have given way to the digital age. The good news is that the shop at Catholic.com has joined the digital revolution. Check out the new digital platform at shop.catholic.com, where all of our DVDs, books, and audio products are now available in digital form for you to purchase and download at your convenience, anywhere you go. for that matter, anywhere in the world. We've got hundreds of offerings, so visit shop.catholic.com today and check out our selection. That's shop.catholic.com.
Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. In this hour, we talk about the transgender moment. You probably will have an immediate kind of sympathy with that phrase, the transgender moment. It does feel like we're going through a kind of cultural moment here. And our guest will be Ryan T. Anderson, who has written a book called When Harry Became Sally, Responding to the Transgender Moment. If you have questions or comments that you would like to share with us, 888-318-7884 is our number, 888-318-7884. In addition to the brand new When Harry Became Sally, Responding to the Transgender Moment, Ryan Anderson is also has some very notable books to his name, including What is Marriage? Man and Woman, A Defense, and Debating Religious Liberty and Discrimination. You see him all over the place on ABC, CNN, CNBC, all those fancy places, and he's been kind enough to join us here. Ryan T. Anderson, thanks for being with us.
Sure thing. Happy to be with you.
I should also mention that you are a scholar at the Heritage Foundation. You're the William E. Simon Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. How long have you been there?
I've been at Heritage for 6 years now.
So, you're a scholar. You get to pick your topics. I'm sure nobody comes to you and says, "Hey, you got to write a book about this." What grabbed you about the transgender moment? Why did you want to write about that?
Sure. So I had been writing about marriage and the debate over the definition of marriage, what marriage is. And then that quickly progressed into a discussion about religious liberty, not just religious liberty in kind of the healthcare context of abortion and then contraception and the HHS mandate, Hobby Lobby, Little Sisters, but then increasingly it was becoming, what about the religious liberty of the baker, the florist, the photographer? Catholic adoption agencies. We see a big battle right now in Philadelphia over Catholic adoption agencies. Catholic schools. And so the marriage debate turned into a religious liberty debate. And then there was a new debate, which was over gender identity. And it seems that, as quickly as LGBT activists won at the Supreme Court in redefining marriage, they pivoted from the LGB part of the acronym to the T part of the acronym. And they started redefining the word sex to mean gender identity. And so it was 2 years ago this month that the Obama administration sent out what's known as a Dear Colleague letter, and it went to all of the nation's schools saying you're now going to have to do your bathrooms and locker rooms and sports teams and dorm rooms and hotel rooms for field trips. You have to do all of those things based on gender identity, not based on biological sex. And that was when we first kind of started getting inquiries from the press, from policymakers, from legislators on, what should we think about this? What should we do about this? And then as I started digging deeper into these questions about gender identity, I came across a number of people who had transitioned and then detransitioned. And they told their stories thinking that transitioning would be the solutions to their problems, and then discovering, 5 or 10 or 15 years later, that it didn't provide the wholeness or the happiness that they were looking for, that it brought additional complications. And then they give their testimony on what it was like detransitioning, going back to identifying with their bodily sex as God created them, and just, the struggles they went through. And that's when I really realized this isn't just about bathrooms. This isn't just about public policy or law. This is about human people, people made in the image and likeness of God, and the human costs of getting human nature wrong.
Wow, what a phrase, the human cost of getting human nature wrong. That's an extraordinary thought. I wonder if, I think I wonder if you see this among young people, people in their teens, people coming into young adulthood. As an old person looking at it, you say it looks an awful lot like an emotionally agitated moment in which, and people always make fun of this when you say this, but in which in a certain way they're being encouraged to try on these other identities. And so it's not just a matter of I was born this way and whatever we may say about that. It's much more of a kind of, there's this thought that this is such a positive movement. I should try to be part of it. And I do think kids are trying on these different identities. How far it will go, one doesn't know, but a lot of people are going to end up with hurts and broken hearts and devastation in their lives because of this moment and the kind of emotional kind of, fervor of the whole thing. Am I off base on that?
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to what you just said. Going through the developmental process, navigating puberty, growing into adulthood, is a difficult process for anyone, even in the best of circumstances. And we now have a culture where this is that much more difficult. In the aftermath of the sexual revolution, in the aftermath of the divorce revolution, with the rise of identity politics, it's that much harder to navigate that path.
Right.
And people who are struggling are looking for solutions. And so what they're being told by celebrities, by medical professionals, by the gender experts, by their school counselors, is that the solution to their problem may very well be that they were assigned the wrong sex at birth. And so if they were to transition, that would provide them with the happiness that they're looking for. It's also really obvious that many of the people who now claim to be in favor of transgender rights haven't thought about this at all. All they know is that they were in favor of gay rights, they were in favor of gay marriage, and the next kind of identity politics issue within the LGBT constellation was transgender rights. And so that means they're in favor of it. But they haven't even thought that critically about what it means to have a high school girl who thinks she's a boy, to give that girl testosterone.
Yes.
Or to perform a double mastectomy on that girl at age 18. And I think many people, if they actually, were trapped in this transgender moment, but if they could get out of it, if they could stop and just think about it more critically, they would see that it doesn't make sense to tell a 3-year-old girl that she's actually a boy and to give her a new name and a new pronoun and a new wardrobe. They would see that this is going much further than anything in the gay rights movement or the effort to redefine marriage ever went, because we're changing people's bodies based upon misguided thoughts and misguided feelings.
Yeah, and so you almost want to advise all of these young people to take your time, almost because before you do something, because you need time for your psyche to mature and for you to have some perspective on life and see, just because the whole world was whipped up about this for a moment, that doesn't mean that that's my destiny or who I am. But let me ask you this: are there people who actually? I mean, it's not really a question. That's not the proper question. I mean, it seems obvious that there are some people who do have body images that are not connected to the reality of what their body is. Whether those are people who have anorexia or bulimia, or whether those are people who believe they should have been a one-legged person and not a two-legged person. And I know some people will think I'm joking, but those are medical conditions that people have. So there are some people who actually have this nagging, almost obsessive sense of, I was born in the wrong body.
That's exactly right. The condition that you mentioned, you mentioned anorexia, bulimia. The next one is bodily integrity identity disorder. The acronym is BID, B-I-I-D. People who think they're disabled when they're actually able-bodied. They want to have surgeries to amputate limbs to identify them, their bodies with their identities. And on none of these conditions do people think that the appropriate therapy is directed at the body. No one says to the high school girl who has anorexia that the solution is liposuction.
Right.
They don't direct therapy at the body. What they direct the therapy are at the thoughts and at their feelings. How can we help you to feel comfortable in your own body? How can we help you to align your thoughts and your feelings with the reality of your body, rather than trying to do what's impossible, changing the reality of your body to line it up with your misguided thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And so we don't do that when it comes to anorexia. We don't do that for people who have bodily integrity identity disorder. We don't do that for people who think they're animals. I mean, you can go online and see people who have had surgeries to try to transform into a dragon and into a lizard and various other animals. But no one thinks that's a good use of medicine. Why is it in this case that we think for someone who frequently it's relying on bad sex stereotypes, right? They don't fit into the sex stereotype that's most prominent for their age group. That we don't say, oh, that means you're the opposite sex. What we help them do is develop a more robust understanding of sex and gender.
May I propose?
Just because you're a boy who likes dolls doesn't mean you're a girl.
Right.
Something like that.
But I wonder what you would make of this. It seems to me that we have made a decision at some point after the 1960s that the most important thing about human life and the most important thing about any particular human life is sex. And having decided that, everything that connects to sex or sexuality we treat in a different way. And so that's why the body dysmorphias of other types, we treat those as psychiatric or neurological or psychological problems. But if they have to do with sex, no, we have decided no. Sex is that's what human life is, essentially, is sex. That's basically the message of the sexual revolution. And so we have to remove that into a different category, and you're a bigot if you say otherwise.
And that's why you see there are very few people who went along with Rachel Dolezal, the white lady who was identifying as black and who was running a local NAACP chapter.
Right.
We have identity politics in the United States, but there are limits to that. You can't just identify as African American.
Right.
You can't just identify with whatever you want to be, except when it comes, as you mentioned, to issues of sexuality. So now they want to say that gender is a spectrum, that sex is merely assigned at birth, that it's fluid, that it exists along the spectrum, and it's really rejecting some of the truths about human nature.
Yeah, like that we're a sexually dimorphic species. Like that's just basic science. And I wonder, I do think there are some scientists and biologists in particular who are actually good on this point about saying, no, that this isn't science. This is some kind of mysticism pretending to be science. This is not science.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so one of the things that I do in the book is I'm trained in philosophy. My PhD is in philosophy. But what I do is I assemble many of the biologists and physicians, medical doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, other kind of experts in the science fields and medical fields, and what they have said on this, because there are some brave people out there who are working on the science, who are working on the medicine, who are willing to speak the truth. And I've tried to kind of collect some of those statements, make sense of them for the ordinary reader who doesn't have a PhD or an MD. The book's really written for lay people to understand what the best of philosophy and of psychiatry and of biology, what the best of all these disciplines tell us about the human person and human nature when it comes to our sex identity and when it comes to people who have trouble identifying with their sex body, gender dysphoria, people who struggle with gender dysphoria.
Ryan T. Anderson is our guest. The book, When Harry Became Sally, Responding to the Transgender Moment. That is indeed an excellent title for the moment we are living through. We are living through the transgender moment. It came on us very suddenly and is proceeding apace with consequences that I think very few in our media are willing to confront, certainly publicly, for fear of being called bigots or worse. So we'll get to your calls for Dr. Anderson and more conversation on When Harry Became Sally right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Hi, this is Cy Kellett. It's easier than you may think to have a Catholic Answers speaker at your conference or parish event. We've got the speakers. Fired up and knowledgeable Catholic Answers speakers have their bags packed and are ready to come see you. Go to CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com to find out just how easy it is to have a Catholic Answers speaker at your next event. That's CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com. Carlo, get your feet off my suitcase.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their Catholic values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Tim Staples here. Since May is the month of Mary and Mother's Day, I'm offering a great opportunity for you to help yourself, your family, and your friends to get to know our Blessed Mother more deeply than ever before. And to help make that happen, we're offering my book, Behold Your Mother, a biblical and historical defense of the Marian doctrines for only $9.95. Folks, that's over 45% off the regular price. From her Immaculate Conception to the Annunciation, from her title as Mother of God to her perpetual virginity, from her assumption into heaven to her role as co-redemptrix, I'll give you all the facts and back them up with solid biblical evidence in a way that's easy to read, remember, and understand. Make this May the month you, your friends, and your family grow closer to the Mother of the Church, our Mother Mary. To get your copies of Behold Your Mother, call 1-888-291-8000 or log on to the shop at Catholic.com.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. This hour we talk with Ryan T. Anderson, the author of the very necessary, we have lots of wonderful books, but this is a necessary book, in addition to being a very good book, When Harry Became Sally, Responding to the Transgender Moment. Dr. Anderson is a scholar at the Heritage Institute. And Dr. Anderson, we have a bunch of high school students with us from St. Joseph Academy today in the studio. And Natalia would like to ask you a question. Natalia?
Please do.
Okay, hi. My question is, for the origins of those who are transgender and those who are gay, is it more psychological or is it more environmental?
Great question. So this is something that more or less everyone will agree to, whether they're left or right, secular or religious, is that they don't know what causes someone to identify as transgender. There are lots of theories that are floating out there, and no one really knows what will originate someone's feeling as if they're born in the opposite body, as if they're trapped in the opposite body. And it seems to be that there are a variety of factors that could influence this, and that it'll be different in each situation. So it looks different when it happens in children versus adults. There are different theories of why, like, a middle-aged man would identify as a woman versus why a 5-year-old boy might identify as a girl. It seems possible that it's even different for men and for women. So there are different reasons why a middle-aged woman versus a middle-aged man, or a 5-year-old boy versus a 5-year-old girl. And partly there can be biological predispositions. And so one example of this is that young boys who have low activity levels, so they're not the real kind of like rambunctious boys, they tend to get picked on by the rambunctious boys. And the rambunctious boys will call the quieter, more kind of subdued boys, you're a wuss, you're a sissy, et cetera, et cetera. And that can actually be one of the causes for a child developing gender dysphoria. So it starts with a biological predisposition, not that they were trapped in the wrong body, born in the wrong body, but that because they won't fit into a certain stereotype about boys their age, that might get them picked on. They might then cope with that bullying by telling themselves that they're actually a girl trapped in a boy's body. Their gender counselor at school might tell them they're actually a girl trapped in a boy's body. And then from there, you can see how one day they might decide to formally transition with either hormones or surgery. What doctors have historically been doing in that situation is engaging in what's known as talk therapy, talking to that boy about why he's a boy. Boys don't have to be rambunctious. Boys don't have to be bullies. Boys don't have to be fitting into whatever limited stereotype boys of his age are expected to be. That boys can be gentle, boys can be sweet, boys can be quiet, boys can be calm, and that once you help the child develop a more mature understanding of human sexuality and of gender roles and of all the rest, they can actually feel more comfortable in their own body. And so that's just one example. Or we could go through, and in the book I do go through a number of case studies that actually from the clinical literature of children who were brought to see a therapist with gender dysphoria, and how the therapists were able to help them feel comfortable in their bodies again by identifying what the underlying cause might have been.
Natalia, what do you make of it? Is that an acceptable answer? You'll accept that?
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in and asking it. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Doctor, one thing I have to say, I have a kind of visceral, almost yuck reflex to, and I want to admit to that before I ask you about it, because I think it keeps us from talking about something that absolutely needs to be talked about, and that is what's being done to children around the country, maybe even around the world, in many of these clinics or in doctors' offices, and in many cases treating nothing wrong with the child with medical interventions that are in many ways permanent.
Yeah, this is, it's hard to talk about, but it's necessary to talk about, because the reality here is that it was 11 years ago that the first pediatric gender clinic opened in the United States. And today there are over 45 pediatric gender clinics in the United States. And if you were a parent of a child and you brought your son or your daughter there because they didn't feel comfortable in their own body, this is the type of advice you would hear. This is the formal standard of care that the gender experts promote. The first is that a child as young as 3 years old, if they are persistent, inconsistent, and insistent that they're the opposite sex, they should be given a new name and a new pronoun and a new wardrobe and given access to new bathrooms and locker rooms, all in an attempt to treat them as if they're the opposite sex. So this is known as socially transitioning. You should socially transition your child at as young as age 3 if they believe persistently, consistently, and insistently that they are the opposite sex. Then as your child approaches puberty, you should place your child on puberty-blocking drugs to prevent your child from going through puberty in the, quote, wrong body. This means that boys and girls will be trapped in immature bodies while the rest of their classmates are developing. So that leads to the third step, which is that now you have these teenage individuals who haven't matured. And so the third step is around age 14, 15, or 16 to administer the opposite sex's sex hormones, to give testosterone to teenage girls, to give estrogen to teenage boys, to try to mimic puberty of the opposite sex, to try to masculinize that girl's body, to try to feminize that boy's body. And then at age 18, the individual is now eligible for reassignment surgery. It doesn't actually reassign sex. Sex can't be reassigned. But what it can do is it can remove certain internal reproductive organs, external genitalia, and or secondary sex characteristics, and then through cosmetic surgery try to recreate something that would resemble the opposite sex's sex organs or secondary sex characteristics. So that by the time you're 20 years old, you might have been on testosterone and had a double mastectomy before you're even mature enough to know what it is to be a woman.
That, I have to say, is horrifying. And I know that many people feel that they are doing good by doing these things, but these are children, and we have such a limited understanding even of how normal development goes, that we feel that we're in a position to say, at 3 years old, let's start you on this. And there's a whole process now developed, and by the time you're 20, you won't be Bob anymore. You'll be somebody else.
Yeah, and many of the doctors that I spoke with, and that I cite in the book, they express concerns about this, because ordinarily somewhere between 80 to 95% of young people who do have a gender identity conflict will naturally grow out of it if development is not interfered with. And let me just say that again. Ordinarily, 80 to 95% of young people who do have a gender identity conflict would naturally grow out of it. But if you go along with this treatment protocol, you might be locking in the transgender identity.
Yeah, so it's not to diminish the experience of the 10 to 20% who will have a persistent sense of themselves being in the wrong body. But without question, that's a lot of children who have, had they been left alone, then they'd have been fine. We'll be right back with more with Ryan T. Anderson. And your calls, I'm sorry I haven't gotten to them, on Catholic Answers Live after this.
Join us on air today on Catholic Answers Live.
What difference does it make who or what you worship or what you believe? Sharing the faith used to make some people mad because it challenged their own strong beliefs. Today, it makes a lot of people yawn because they don't have strong beliefs about anything. Religious indifference is a great spiritual sickness of our age, a product of the relativism that dominates modern culture. This is Matt Nelson, and in my new book, Just Whatever, I'll take down the building blocks of religious indifference one by one. We'll look at the different kinds of indifference you tend to encounter in your friends and family members to see where they come from and why they're seductive. What you believe matters. Find out why and what to do about it in my new book, Just Whatever. You can order your copy of Just Whatever by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Sharing the gospel with family and friends can be challenging. It's especially hard when they won't even hear you out because of all the mental roadblocks they've built up. This is Carlo Broussard, and in my new book, Prepare the Way, my aim is to help you tackle that essential first step to apologetics and evangelization, getting people to listen with an open mind. Even our best witness can bounce right off folks like these if we don't prepare the way first, breaking down barriers and leaving minds and souls free to encounter the truth. I'll give you evidence and arguments and step-by-step strategies based on asking the right questions to help them overcome their obstacles and make a straight path for the Lord. Order your copy of Prepare the Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Now there's a fast and easy way to get in touch with EWTN. The EWTN Everything number. Call 1-800-447-EWTN to get the latest information on programming, special events, pilgrimages, and more. Our EWTN Family Viewer Services representatives are ready to help you with whatever your needs may be. The EWTN Everything number. 1-800-447-EWTN. EWTN.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Our guest this hour, Ryan T. Anderson, is the author of When Harry Became Sally, Responding to the Transgender Moment. I notice you have quite a few people who have kind of blurbed the book. You have some very impressive friends and colleagues, but among the many things that are said is that I think nobody wants to let go of a basic idea that we must not be uncharitable about this, that there is a great deal of human suffering that we're confronting here, and that smart aleck answers or just telling people to knock it off is not the way to go. We have to be more serious and more charitable than that.
That is not just exactly right, but it's profoundly right and profoundly important. this was not meant to be kind of, one of those like political bestsellers where you slam your opponent and you try to turn the rhetoric to, number 11 on the dial that only goes up to 10. This is really meant to equip people for how to understand what's going on and then how to respond with love in truth. Because the only way we can actually be really compassionate is if we know what's the truth about the human person, about human nature, about people who are suffering, and then if we can communicate it in a way that will resonate with them. So the book is really meant to turn down the temperature on these debates and to also really distinguish between an ideology that needs to be combated and people who need to be comforted. Right?
Yes.
I mean, it's the ideology that is doing so much harm in so many people's lives. But the people who are suffering from this, they're frequently the victims of the ideology. They're not the perpetrators. They're the victims because they were told by a school guidance counselor or by a physician or by a therapist that the solution to their problems was testosterone, or the solution to their problems was a double mastectomy. And it doesn't always work out that way.
No, no, indeed. Lots of folks on the phone for you. I have monopolized you a bit. Let me go to Nathan in Wheeling, West Virginia, listening on 90.7 FM. Nathan, thank you so much for waiting. Your question for Ryan T. Anderson.
Hi. Thanks for letting me on the air. So what I am wondering is, like you were just saying, there's a great deal of suffering here, and I know three men who believe that they're women, and they all have taken feminine names, have started expecting people to use feminine pronouns. So if I go along with that, knowing that as the church teaches, they are really men, is that wrong? Is that hurting? Is that causing damage, or is it rather an attitude of charity to, at least not to cause offense by using the pronoun that they were assigned at birth and using their old names? I mean, I'm sincerely confused because they'll get very upset if you call them by their old name, or use their old gender pronoun. So what do you all think?
That it's a great question, and it's a very difficult one to know how to handle in this situation, because you need to keep I would say there are two guiding principles that you need to keep in mind. On the one hand, you need to maintain long-term relationship with these three individuals who are in your life. But the only way you're going to be any good to these three people, whether they're three friends of yours or three family members of yours, is if you are in a long-term relationship with them. Because it's not going to be one conversation that you have that provides the solution, right? It's going to be years of friendship and of relationship so that they can trust you, so that they can come to you when they're looking for your perspective, that they know you care about them, that you're not rejecting them, you're not belittling them. And so on the one hand, the need to maintain that long-term relationship. On the other hand, there's the need not to make them think that you think they actually are the opposite sex, right? You have a duty here to bear witness to the truth. Because what you don't want is to give them the impression that you think it's a good idea for them to transition. You don't want to enable them in that way. You don't want to give them the sense that you think they actually are a woman trapped in a man's body. Now, how do you do both of those things simultaneously? It'll look different in every situation. I don't think there's any hard and fast rule that says you can never use a new name. And one of the reasons why is that many of us go by nicknames. So you have someone who is named John, but they go by Jack, or they were named Charles and they go by Charlie. And none of us think it's a problem to address people how they preferred to be called. You know, some people go by their initials, RJ, instead of Richard John, something like that. And so I think you could say to someone, I'm going to, you know, refer to you by whatever it is you ask me to refer to you by, out of a sense of respect for you. But I want you to know that I don't think you actually are a woman. And I think we can disagree about that while still being friends, still being family. And then here, I think it's just like anything else. We all have friends and family members with whom we disagree, but we don't relitigate that disagreement every time we see them, right? So maybe we have a family member who's fallen away from the church. Maybe we have a family member who's living with a boyfriend or with a girlfriend. Maybe we have a family member who's not raising their kids the way that we think they should raise their kids. And ideally, what we would do in those situations is we would find the right time, the right place to express our concern. We would let them know that we're always there if they want to talk to us about that concern. But we wouldn't constantly bring it up every time we see them, right? So it's not like at every Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, you're still not going to Mass, or something like that, because then they write us off, right? So we want to bear witness to the truth, encourage people in the truth, but also maintain long-term relationship. Does that make sense? Does that get at what you're asking in the question?
Yes, it does make sense, and I think that also, though, you know, for some of the people I've mentioned, I don't even have that close of a relationship with them. So if I just, like recently I met one of them at the library, and I just had to sort of, I tried to carefully avoid using either name for the poor man, because I knew he would get really upset and possibly violent if I used his name as a man, but if I used his name as a woman, I feared I would be validating his delusion.
Right.
Yep.
So I there's really not an opportunity for a long-term. I only have intermittent contact with this man, but you know, I say hi. You know, I'll say hi to him, and he knows my name, and I know both of his names. So what do you do in that situation?
Like that, I think you just try to be polite, and be open to developing a long-term relationship. You may be the only person in this individual's life who at a certain phase in your relationship would be willing to say, I don't think you actually are a woman. But you can't tell someone that until they're ready to hear it, until you've developed the type of rapport where he would trust that you're saying it not to belittle him or to mock him, but because you actually care about him. And so I would say in that situation, you know, be open to developing a closer friendship with the individual, so that you're at a place where you could one day discuss those issues with him.
Okay, Nathan?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much for that call. I don't think that there are too many people who will say, I have 3 friends in my life who are transgender people, and I think that may be because most people are not as open as Nathan is. That's a very impressive thing to me, and I'm very glad that you called, Nathan. Thank you for that question. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Dr. Ryan Anderson, When Harry Became Sally, responding to the transgender moment, after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Tim Staples here. Since May is the month of Mary and Mother's Day, I'm offering a great opportunity for you to help yourself, your family, and your friends to get to know our Blessed Mother more deeply than ever before. And to help make that happen, we're offering my book, Behold Your Mother, a biblical and historical defense of the Marian doctrines, for only $9.95. Folks, that's over 45% off the regular price. From her Immaculate Conception to the Annunciation, from her title as Mother of God to her perpetual virginity, from her assumption into heaven to her role as co-redemptrix. I'll give you all the facts and back them up with solid biblical evidence in a way that's easy to read, remember, and understand. Make this May the month you, your friends, and your family grow closer to the Mother of the Church, our Mother Mary. To get your copies of Behold Your Mother, call 1-888-291-8000 or log on to the shop at Catholic.com.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
What difference does it make who or what you worship or what you believe? Sharing the faith used to make some people mad because it challenged their own strong beliefs. Today, it makes a lot of people yawn because they don't have strong beliefs about anything. Religious indifference is the great spiritual sickness of our age, a product of the relativism that dominates modern culture. This is Matt Nelson, and in my new book, Just Whatever, I'll take down the building blocks of religious indifference one by one. We'll look at the different kinds of indifference you tend to encounter in your friends and family members to see where they come from and why they're seductive. What you believe matters. Find out why and what to do about it in my new book, Just Whatever. You can order your copy of Just Whatever by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to the Great Big Monday Show here at Catholic Answers Live. Ryan Anderson is our guest. When Harry Became Sally, Responding to the Transgender Moment is his latest book. And where's that? Who's that book from? What's the...
Encounter Books.
Encounter Books.
The
Okay.
same publisher who did the book What is Marriage? Man and Woman at a Fence.
Yes.
They're willing to publish controversial but correct argument.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And this is a book for the general reader. It's not an academic tome. You can kind of, and I would encourage people to read it because I think, I wonder if you would agree with me. I think in many ways, on one side of the spectrum, people are not avoiding this at all. They're pushing it. And the other side is kind of politely averting their eyes. But that politely averting our eyes is actually, we're failing a lot of our brothers and sisters on this planet.
Yeah, we have a duty to bear witness to the truth and to minister to those who are suffering. And to a certain extent, the only institution in American public life that will tell the truth on this issue will be the church, with the church understood as not just the priests and the bishops, but the laity, the people of God, that to a certain extent it's our vocation to be defending human dignity and human rights and human flourishing when the rest of our culture has gotten it wrong. And it's totally understandable what you just described. So many people feel so beleaguered and so beat up after the past decade of the debate about the definition of marriage and the redefinition of marriage that they don't want to stick their heads up again, right? They don't want to speak up again and be attacked. Right. They don't want to be called deplorable and be placed in a basket of deplorables. But I think in this case, there's too much at stake to remain silent. And that in order to love your neighbor, we need to educate ourselves so that we can speak the truth in love, the way that we've been able to do on an issue like abortion. Right? It didn't come easily at first, and there are all sorts of training ministries that teach people how to speak about abortion, how to respect the rights and the dignity of both the mother and the child. We need to be able to develop that capacity on the issue of gender identity and gender dysphoria.
Yeah, and it took us a little while to get up to speed, certainly with the abortion kind of controversy and debate and movement and all that. We're still getting up to speed, but we're very grateful for the book, When Harry Met Sally, to help everybody get up to speed. Let's take a call. Tammy in Columbus, Ohio, listening on 820 AM. You are on with Ryan Anderson. Your question, please.
Yes. What do you do if you are in the small percentage of people that there is actually something medically wrong with you, or maybe not medically wrong with you, but you were born with, let's say, both sex organs, and you were misidentified, and everybody told you you were crazy your entire life, and you went to have the sex change operation, and you found out as a woman that you actually had testicles that never descended, and you had the interior makings of being a male, and your whole life, your whole family told you you were nuts.
Yeah, I mean, so there are instances. What you just described has been colloquially referred to as hermaphroditism or an intersex condition. The kind of technical terminology now is a disorder of sexual development. And so you can have people who have various disorders in the development of their sexual reproductive system, where it may mean that they have internal male organs, but externally they present as female, or they might have a combination of both. It's a fraction of the population, but that's still thousands of people, people whose lives matter, and it's important that we get it right. These can happen, just for the general audience here. It can happen for both chromosomal or hormonal reasons. That during the developmental process, there could be something wrong with the chromosomal composition of the child, such as we can see a trisomy condition like Down syndrome. There could be a chromosomal disorder that would result in Down syndrome. There could be a chromosomal disorder with the sex chromosome that might result in a disorder of sexual development. There can also be hormonal disorders where your body develops testicles that produce testosterone, but your body can't respond to the testosterone because you lack the receptors for the testosterone. So normally what happens in these conditions, there's a team of physicians at the time of birth that try to accurately identify the child, not just based on the chromosomes or the hormones, but how the child will develop holistically. The sex of a human being is based upon how we're sexually organized with respect to sexual reproduction. And there are two ways of being organized. There's a male way and there's a female way. And just like anything else for human development, development can go awry. You can have disorders of cardiac development, and we'll call it heart disease. You can have disorders of respiratory development, we'll call it lung disease. There can be disorders of sexual development. And what they try to do is they try to accurately identify what is the underlying kind of holistic totality sexual identity of the person. But if, as you say, that they got that wrong, there's nothing wrong with getting it right later in life. I would also say, in general, here is that the vast majority of people who struggle with gender dysphoria did not have a disorder of sexual development. These are people who physically are fully developed with respect to their sexual capacities. And so it's not a physical problem, but it's something with their thoughts or their feelings it's the thoughts and the feelings not lining up with physical reality. And so in those cases, you don't want to direct the therapy at the body.
Tammy, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for the question. I only leave it there because we want to get to as many people as we can before the top of the hour while we have Dr. Anderson with us. We go now to Keita in Manhattan, New York, watching on Facebook. Keita, thank you so much for joining us on Facebook. Your question, please.
Hi. So lovely to hear you all. I just kind of dropped in and saw you talking about this book, and it piqued my interest. I'm actually a trans woman myself who is a Christian. So I wanted to know more about your guys' book.
Okay.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for tuning in. The book doesn't come at it from a theological or religious perspective. I'm a Catholic, but for the book, I just look at the biology and the psychiatry and the philosophy on how we should understand what it is to be a man or a woman, and what that does and doesn't mean. One of the kind of conclusions of the book is that many of the current kind of underlying foundations of much of the transgender activism is actually based on sex stereotypes, in which if you enjoy certain things that are kind of stereotypically masculine or feminine, that could be the underlying indication that you're actually a man or a woman. And so it's in very interesting ways in which the transgender movement are kind of doubling down on sex stereotypes, that if you're a boy who plays with dolls or a girl who plays with trucks, that means you're the opposite sex. And that one of the ways that we can actually recover a healthier understanding of these things is to reject misguided sex stereotypes. To on the one hand, reject androgyny, which would say that men and women are the same, but on the other hand, to reject patriarchy or matriarchy or any type of ideology that would say men have to and then fill in the blank, or women ought to and then fill in the blank. And that these would be ways in which we could help people feel comfortable in their own bodies, being who they are without having to transform their bodies.
Is that what the kind of response you were looking for, Kita, or I wasn't sure exactly.
Well,
it was a very general question.
I wanted to make a comment. Just
Okay.
I think I'm assuming that you aren't a trans person yourself. The good doctor who wrote this book. I hear what you're saying, and I think I hear the idea of believing that people are mixing up somebody going against stereotypical gender roles as being as taking that as meaning that they should change their sex or gender, however you would describe that. I think, having gone through this myself, and I know that part of what I was seeing in the chat room was discussing also age. I don't know if that if you guys mentioned age at all. I missed that part. When I began my transition, I was 13 years old, so I was fairly young. It wasn't, I had been in therapy since I was 8 years old at my church. I grew up in the Lutheran section of Christianity, and it wasn't so much a question about what I do, because I did play with Barbies and all the things like that, and that was never a pushing, there was never, any like, oh, my child should be this because they play with Barbies or anything like that. That had nothing to do with it. And I think overall what most therapists who do deal with trans people, that's not really how they are classifying this. It's more of, men and women can do anything their heart desires. So, we have women who can fix cars and who are the head of their families, like you said. And we have men who are stay-at-home dads and are taking care of the kids, while women are out there, making the brunt of the money, winning the bread. And I think that's one of the misconceptions about trans people. And not all trans people are stereotypically feminine. I happen to be stereotypically feminine. You can hear my voice. I happen to have had gender reassignment surgery, but I have girlfriends who are very masculine and they do masculine things. Those two things aren't necessarily dependent on each other. And it's the same way around. I know trans men who do feminine things, very feminine things, but the way that they present in the world and who they feel as a person is what has been set. Even before, Christianity existed, people were set in the ways of male and female, and that is, and that was the way that they were treated, throughout the day, throughout their lives. And there are people who just
don't conform, don't fit. Is that what you mean to those?
Not even that they don't fit, because for me, my personal self, I fit into the feminine side. I fit into being a woman. I see my mother, my sister. I'm like,
Kita, I'm really, I don't want to be rude to you, but we're almost at the end of the show. Would you like? Did you want to have a wrap up comment? Because I'm very grateful that you called, or did you want a specific response from Ryan Anderson?
I was just very interested in what the book was. I mean, as somebody who has been combated with Christianity by other Christians within my church, outside of my church. I was just interested to see what this show had to say that came from a Christian, specifically Catholic viewpoint.
Okay, fair enough. I am sorry that we have to leave it there. Dr. Anderson, any closing words for us?
All I would want to say is just how wonderful it is that we could have that exchange, civil, thoughtful, respectful, and where it's obvious that, all of us concerned here are concerned with what's going to be best for people. And I would just say that those are the types of conversations we need to continue having in the United States. That too often it turns into shouting matches with accusations of ill will on both sides.
What?
And that we need to have better exchanges of goodwill. And I think we just had a good one there.
With Kita, yes.
It's a good note to end on.
Very good. Thank you. I'm surprised that you would categorize our country as combative. We all get along perfectly. Well, all right. Thank you so much. When Harry Became Sally is the book responding to the transgender moment. Ryan Anderson is the author. We'll see you tomorrow on Catholic Answers Live.